Shunguang has been out for a while and she's really strong, but I've seen people still confused about how to do her combos or rotations. So in today's guide, I want to cover everything you need to know about her. Kit combos, gameplay, builds, calculations, and teams. Timestamps are down in the video, but I highly recommend you to watch everything. Shunguang is a DPS that ignores a lot of the game mechanics. That's not only because she has a lot of invulnerability on her kit, but also because of how her Enlightened State works. It's a special state that not only unlocks new powerful moves, it also basically activates the stun damage multiplier on enemies, meaning that this is Shunguang stun window. While most DPS relies on stunner to get access to this stun damage multiplier, Shunguang can access it by simply entering this Enlightened State. But this doesn't make stunners completely useless for Shunguang. That's because a lot of stunners can increase the enemy stun damage multiplier, which means more damage for Shunguang Enlightened State. Learning how to optimize your Enlightened States and getting as many as you can is really important to maximize the Shunguang damage potential. There are two ways you can enter the Enlightened State: by using your ultimate or by stacking 6 Qingming Sword points. You can stack points by dealing damage to enemies while below 6 points and outside of the Enlightened rotation. Her EX special generates 1 point when used, and if you have her additional ability active, Shunguang also gets 3 points whenever another squad member activates an Ether Veil. If you end up overcapping points by using your ultimate or triggering an Ether Veil, you can store up to 3 points. Once you have 6 points, you can either hold basic or just enter the field again, and Shunguang will use her entry skill to deal damage and activate her Enlightened State. Once in the Enlightened State, Shunguang activates Ether Veil Verdict and applies Veil Vulnerability to enemies, which is equal to the enemy's stun damage multiplier. It's really important to note that this snapshots the stun multiplier at the moment of activation, meaning that any changes to the stun damage multiplier after it activates won't get reflected in the Veil Vulnerability. So if you're using someone that can increase the stun damage multiplier, such as Trigger or Dialing, it's really important to make sure that you apply the increase before activating Shunguang Enlightened State. This Veil Vulnerability also has a limit on how much damage it can increase. It caps at 110%, meaning that enemies with a stun multiplier higher than 210% will get their Veil Vulnerability cap at 210%. The only way to increase this cap is by activating Shunguang's Mindscape 4, which increases the cap to 200%. Most of Shunguang's damage while in the Enlightened State comes from basic attacks that consumes her Qingming Sword force. These being her plunging and sweeping basic attacks, or Thunder Light Annihilation and Thunder Light Maximum if you want to use the official names. You'll also get 1 stack of Culmination after using her plunging attack, which is a pseudo Qingming Sword force that doesn't stack. This can only be used by her EX special while under the Enlightened State, which consumes Qingming Sword force and requires holding down the EX special button or pressing EX after both her plunging and sweeping attack, which is the recommended way to do it. The plunging attack happens after the aerial base attack too, and the sweeping attack can be used after the plunging attack. But there are some shortcuts you can use to speed up the point consumption, which is why Shunguang has a lot of flexibility when it comes to the lighter rotations. And you probably already heard about long combos and short combos. A long combo uses a lot of base attacks to maximize the damage in a single and lighter rotation. But since most of the damage comes from the attacks that consumes your Qingming Sword force, and you cannot generate Qingming Sword points when in the lighter state, this could mean less and lighter rotations through the fight. You should use long rotations if you don't need another Enlightened rotation to finish the fight. You lack energy and resources to quickly enter another Enlightened State, or if you're using Brimstone or any weapon that relies on basic attacks. The most efficient and safe long combo is doing aerial basic 1, 2, 3, hit another basic after the plunging attack to use the sweeping attack, and tap EX to go back in the air, consuming the culmination stack and getting all the invulnerability to avoid damage. Repeat the same combo again, but at the end, instead of just tapping EX special, hold it down to use her finishing skill and end the Enlightened State. You can extend this even further by using extra basics while on the ground, or just by staying in the Enlightened State instead of ending it. But I would advise against it, since as I explained before, it delays your next Enlightened State. A short combo, on the other hand, uses all shortcuts to spend all points and exit the Enlightened State as fast as possible. It's the best when you want to maximize the number of Enlightened rotations you can do in a single fight. such as my Miasma Priest Max Score Showcase that I posted a few weeks ago. For a shorter rotation, instead of doing basics in the air, you just tap EX to use a plunging attack, follow up with a basic to use the sweeping attack, and then EX again to consume the combination and go back in the air. And then you repeat the same rotation again, but holding EX at the end to exceed the Enlightened State. Finally, there are two different finishes for your Enlightened State, and both can be triggered by the same way, by either holding down EX special while out of Qingming's word force, or pressing the ultimate button. By default, it's an EX special with really high motion values, but if you use your decibels to enter the Enlightened State, you use an ultimate finisher with even higher motion values and a really nice animation. Outside of these points, you don't need to focus too much on anything else, as this is the main Shunguang gameplay loop, and she already has a lot of invulnerability on her kit to make you safe through the fight. But here are some extra tips and information that maybe could be useful for you. In the base form, dodge counters are really helpful for you because it generates a good amount of Qingming's word points and helps you enter the Enlightened rotation faster. Since her EX special generates one Qingming's word point as soon as you use it, you can use it to trigger the last point and quick swap away from Shunguang and use a quick assist back to her to trigger her enter skill without going over the long animation. You will lose the damage from her EX special, but the damage from the base EX is much lower than her basic attacks from the Enlightened State. If you can force an ultimate on Shunguang while she is in the Enlightened State, she will use her ultimate finisher instead of the Decibel ultimate, or EX special finisher. However, this is not worth it, as getting access to another Enlightened rotation is much better than using one ultimate finisher. For now, this is possible with Dai on your team, but they could add similar mechanics for other characters in the future. It's better to time your stun windows to your Enlightened State downtime, since you can use the base form to build up points and still benefit from the enemy's stun damage multiplier. Just remember to reapply stun damage effects to the enemy after it recovers from the stun, since most of them are removed after the enemy recovers from the stun. And now, let's talk about building your Shunguang. For disc sets, the best option is her own disc set, as it gives a total of 20% crit rate and 10% combat attack, and also 10% damage for her. It's a really strong option, and the stats it provides is completely unmatched, but sadly she's the only one that can make full use of it, so in case you're still lacking good disc pieces, you can use Woodpecker Electro or Puffer Electro in case you're playing with Dai on your team. For the 2-piece set, go for Branch and Blade Song, Puffer Electro, Fang Metal, or Hormone Punk. All of these options are really similar in the damage potential it gives, so go for the one with the best substats. For disc stats, you should use attack or crit damage on your slot 4. Disc 5 is ideally penetration. Shunguang already gets a lot of stats from her kit and team buffs, so using penetration is a really good option. Just keep in mind that depending on your Mindscapes, team, and boss that you're fighting, this could change and make penetration on the same level as other options, or even worse, such as when fighting the new boss on Deadly Assault, which has a lower base defense, and this makes penetration one of the worst options for her. And lastly, for disc 6, the only option is attack. For substats, you should focus on crit rate, crit damage, and attack. Just keep in mind that if you're using her disc set, you already get a total of 50% crit rate just on buffs, both from her core skill and the disc set. So you can only have up to 50% crit rate on your stat page. After this, you can finish it off with some flat penetration, and lastly, flat attack. For skill upgrade priority, focus on her core skill as usual, then go for basics, ultimates, and EX specials. After this, you can go for dodges, and lastly, assists if you really want it. But you're not using it that much, so just leave your spare resources for this. As for vengeance, Shunguang's signature weapon is the best option for her. It gives a lot of different buffs for Shunguang, 20% resistant ignore, 25% damage, and 25% crit damage, but most of this can only be used by Shunguang, as it requires an attack agent that activates Ether Veil. If you don't plan on getting the signature vengeance, using Soldier MB signature or the Brimstone are good options for you, as these weapons gives no crit rate, which is something that is really easy for you to overcap on Shunguang. Because of this, I don't recommend using any crit rate weapon on Shunguang, and if you do, it might be worth replacing her disc set with something else to avoid overcapping her crit rate. For Mindscapes, both Mindscape 1 and Mindscape 2 are really interesting. Mindscape 1 gives some extra buffs that are always active, and on top of this, it also allows you to start with Enlightened State. This could translate to one extra Enlightened State through the fight, depending on the team that you're using. Mindscape 2 adds a lot of extra damage and quality of life since it increases the number of Qingming Sword points you can store to 6 and the number of combination stacks to 9. Not to mention that you're also going to get extra combination stacks just by consuming Qingming Sword first, meaning a lot of EX specials to your Enlightened State that will benefit from the defense ignore. Mindscapes 4 doesn't give damage by itself since it only increases the Veil vulnerability cap. So if you don't have any sources of stun damage multiplier on your team, or you're not fighting a boss with high stun damage multiplier, this is completely pointless for you. And Mindscape 6 gives free ultimate finishers once in a while, adding a lot of extra damage to your rotation. It doesn't require any changes on your gameplay, so it's really just free damage for you. For team compositions, Dialing and Zhao is the best possible team for Ye Shunguang, as Dialing gives stun multiplier when hitting the enemy with paper, and also free ultimates for Ye Shunguang, which means more Enlightened States through the room. Zhao gives extra stats and access to Ether Veil, which interacts with Ye Shunguang's additional ability, meaning even more Enlightened rotations through the room. Astra could replace any of the two. While Astra doesn't give Ether Veil or extra ultimates, it gives a lot of stats and can use support ranges in these sets to maximize Ye Shunguang's damage potential. For stunners, the best options are characters that can provide some kind of utility or stun damage multiplier for Ye Shunguang. I don't recommend using stunner just for the days, since Ye Shunguang damage potential is not limited by stun windows. Trigger is a good option, especially with her signature and extra Mindscapes for Ye Shunguang, since it sets a lot of defense threat on enemies. Jifufu can also find a lot of value for Ye Shunguang, since the ultimate finisher that you can use after spending decibels also counts as ultimate and regenerates even more decibels for Ye Shunguang. Bonus points if you have Jifufu Mindscape 1, as it increases the stun damage multiplier. If you don't have a stunner with good synergy or stun damage multipliers for Ye Shunguang, just use 2 supports and maximize her damage through the fight. And that should be everything for my Ye Shunguang guide. Remember to give it a like if the video was helpful, and if you still have any questions, feel free to drop them in the comments down below or join my Discord server. Thank you so much for watching this video, have a beautiful day, and I'll see you next time.